Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners Board Briefing. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. For those presenting today, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. Our first board briefing today is the 2027-28 Charter Review Process Update and the CRC application, which is the Charter Review Committee application. So I want to invite those folks. As they're coming down, I want to thank Amada and all of the members of the CIC Charter Subcommittee for all the work in laying out the foundations for a successful charter review process. The work that happens every 6 years is really important to our community and our democracy. And so it's important that we do it right as we're starting to ramp up this work. I'm really pleased that the subcommittee took the time to really dive into this topic. They came from all 4 districts of the county and really appreciate the preparation for the formal launch of the process. So thanks so much, Amada. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So good morning, Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Amada Perez. I'm the Director of the Office of Community Involvement. Really excited to be here, and so thank you for the opportunity to provide a briefing on the upcoming charter review process and charter review committee application. Particularly excited about co-presenting with members of the Community Involvement Committee who have been working closely with OCI for the last 9 months preparing for this project. Next slide, please. OCI's mission is to support and strengthen civic participation and volunteerism in Multnomah County, and we do that both as direct engagers of community members who are serving on 3 key advisory committees, as well as serving as a collaboration and engagement resource hub for other county staff who are doing engagement in the many ways we do that across our departments. Our work is guided by Multnomah County's commitment to equity, early, inclusive, and equitable outreach engagement. So we are paying close attention to potential barriers to participation, to the involvement of communities historically underrepresented, and to matters of access, inclusion, education, retention, and what we might think of as participant satisfaction. One of the key committees we support is the Community Involvement Committee, or the CIC. Next slide, please. The CIC meets bi-monthly as a full committee and monthly, and often cases more, in subcommittees. They apply an engagement lens to understand and evaluate the county's programs and services, and then collectively each year they determine a focus for their work, and using a range of inquiry methods, they study matters of engagement and evaluate those findings to interpret and identify meaningful observations and recommendations that ultimately serve to guide and advise OCI on diverse engagement issues and strategies. Last summer, the CIC voted to form a subcommittee dedicated to the 2027-28 Charter Review, not only to study the review process, but to collaborate with OCI to prepare for the large body of work that would be necessary in order to be early, intentional, and inclusive. Next slide, please. We've shared this timeline before, and as you can see, we are now in phase 1, having officially launched charter efforts. In a little over a week, the Charter Review Committee application will be live and applications will be accepted until October 1st. As outlined in the Home Rule Charter, OCI will evaluate applications, working with a panel of evaluators using a set of criteria each of your offices have been invited to review and give feedback on, so thank you for that. Based on the evaluations, OCI will rank applicants. Those recommendations will be presented to the chair, and per code, the chair will select applicants, and with board approval, appointments will take place, ideally by the end of the year. This plan, however, would not be actualized if it were not for the dedicated work that has taken place for the last 9 months. Next slide, please. So today we're here to present the application and process while also providing a briefing on what we refer to as Phase 0, which is the foundational work that has been done to prepare for and successfully launch Phase 1. The new Charter Review Committee coordinator will start next month and will inherit and build from this body of work. It would not have been possible to practice early and inclusive preparation for the charter review process without the dedication of and collaboration with community members who selected the charter as their primary focus for their participation on the CIC this past year. Next slide, please. Of the 13-member advisory committee, 5 CIC members representing all 4 districts selected the charter subcommittee to advise and support OCI with the preparation and launch of the process, and their work has been invaluable these last 9 months. So now I will pass it on to the subcommittee chair, Brian, and other CIC members here to share their work. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Brian Romer. I'm the chair of the CIC Charter Review Subcommittee, and I'm in District 3. As Amada said, we first learned about the Charter Review and the process of it at our September 25 retreat. We were very interested in participating as we felt that community involvement would be an essential component of this process. We thought that starting early as possible was critical, so from October of 2025 to the present, we met every 2 weeks to conduct research and offer input to OCI. Specifically, over the last 9 months, we thoroughly researched the charter review process from counties throughout Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii. We reviewed the North Star Civic Foundation report, and we met with city staff who oversaw the 2022 Portland Charter Review. Based on this work, we helped OCI identify the attributes of an ideal member, write the questions for the application, develop public education strategies, update the website, and create the FAQ. The rest of the subcommittee will now share details about each of these points. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Brian. For the record, my name is Renee Bell. I'm a member of the CIC from District 2. And these next 2 slides just go into deeper detail about our process. So as Brian mentioned, in September of 2025, we had our annual retreat where the CIC determined which topics we wanted to form subcommittees around. Based on our understanding of the need for experience with community engagement, we selected the charter review process as a subcommittee topic right around the same time that the OCI was beginning their preparations for it. Then in October, we defined the subcommittee goals and interest areas while the OCI was meeting with staff who worked on the charter review 6 years ago. Then in November, we studied and discussed past charter review processes. You can find information on past charter reviews on the website, as well as recommendations from the North Star Civic Foundation that Brian mentioned. Then in December, we were able to meet with a member of the 2022 City of Portland Charter Review, as well as the project manager, to understand their experiences and about lessons learned. Next slide, please. Moving into 2026, while OCI developed the Charter Review Committee Program Manager job description, the CIC drafted attributes of an ideal CRC member and committee. We brainstormed what a successful, diverse, and collaborative CRC would look like, as well as what would be needed from those members. This helped ground and shape the evaluation criteria, the application, and outreach materials. OCI drafted materials and met with county partners in the first few months of the year while we reviewed other jurisdictions' websites, as Brian mentioned, to inform and recommend updates to the Multnomah County Charter Review process web pages. This includes information about the committee and detailed frequently asked questions pages. It is a complex thing. And then in the last few months, the CIC and OCI have collaborated on a draft application, and OCI has produced many of the materials we've recommended or advised on, including a fantastic informational video starring Amada and the chair. If you haven't seen it, please see it. And my colleagues will now dive into some specifics of our work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Good morning. For the record, my name is Chase Landry. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a CIC member from District 1. As Renee mentioned, one of our first activities was to brainstorm and draft attributes of an ideal successful CRC member. This step was important as we wanted to find people who together could make up a committee that would represent the county, do justice to this important task, and function well together. These included attributes such as curiosity, a willingness to discuss and compromise, a basic understanding of the county's structure and core programs and services, and an interest in community involvement and civic participation. We also discussed the value of recruiting and honoring people with different lived experiences. This was on top of the geographic diversity required in the charter. And we also talked about the importance of having some other basic values alignment with the work of Multnomah County. We understand that these attributes would be adapted into the application evaluation criteria and then serve as our guide to develop application questions. OCI took our brainstorming sessions alongside their conversations with others and built out our evaluation criteria from there. Next slide, please. Okay, next we will briefly discuss the development process and makeup of the CRC application itself. The application was developed by OCI and the CIC together. Throughout the process, we have also invited feedback by others within the county. The application is due to go live on July 1st and will be open through the last day of September. Next slide, please. The evaluation criteria became the foundation of our development of possible application questions. During this process, we reviewed questions from applications for similar volunteer positions and prior iterations of the CRC at the city and the county, both for inspiration. Through another brainstorming session, we came up with dozens of different possible questions, which would inform us about how applicants fit different aspects of the evaluation criteria. Over several meetings, we refined them down to the most important ones, cutting out redundant questions and combining others for brevity. What you see on the slide here are the sections of the application in order that we came up with. First, we thought it was important upfront to include questions that confirm applicants understand the role, commitment, and eligibility criteria in a member expectation section. The basic questions then in the contact information section and the questions for collecting the better impact demographics in the getting to know you section were a little more preset than the others we developed. Next slide, please. Let's look now at the interest and experience section, the main part of the application. We settled on 8 total questions in this section and connected each of them to evaluation criteria to help us elicit responses related to those criteria, while demystifying why we asked the question. The reasoning behind each question is also explicitly shared with the applicants in the text of the application. With these questions, we will be able to learn more about a candidate's motivation, commitment, experience, and openness to the demands of this unique committee. While the full text of the 8 questions we generated for the application have already been shared with you, we wanted to provide you with a little further explanation of our reasoning behind these questions. And so you'll see on the screen a list of the information we believed was most important to learn from each of the applicants in this section. Primarily, we wanted to know their interest in serving, knowledge of Multnomah County, experience maintaining a long-term commitment to a complex project or volunteer role, experience conducting research, that's personal, academic, or otherwise, experience working with communities on local issues, perspective on social and economic issues as a lens for evaluating the charter, ideas to incorporate county values into CRC work, practice of balancing personal perspectives with public input, and experience collaborating and compromising with others on a committee. While all of these in-depth questions together may seem like a heavy lift for an application, we believe that it is a reasonable ask considering the amount of reading, writing, and time which will be involved in participation in the CRC. In this way, the application itself can serve as one of the indicators of an applicant's potential aptitude. However, we did not want the applications to take up an inordinate amount of time for each of the applicants, so we decided to make a word count recommendation for each of the questions. We worked together on this, and then OCI staff also completed sample answers to ensure that the suggested word count would allow for complete replies. We also wanted to mitigate possible barriers for completing the application, and we discussed at length how to support community members in doing so. We were especially mindful of folks who may have accessibility needs, want or need translations, or are unfamiliar with the application processes. Therefore, on our recommendation, OCI is planning to offer multiple applications in multiple languages, host virtual and in-person info sessions at libraries, and provide online, phone, and email resources and support, all to help reduce barriers for folks through the application process. Next, my colleague Jen will speak to the Charter Review education and outreach plans.
Good morning. My name is Jen Mayer, and I'm with District 2. I'm a CIC member, and as a committee, we're focused on advising OCI around community engagement efforts that ensure clear, early, and equitable community engagement and education. That's always top of mind for us. We drew from our research and interviews as well as personal experience to come up with education priorities for the CRC process, including the educational video Renee mentioned, announcing the charter review process. It's already published and available on the website. We also hope that for a future video in early 2027 to detail how the public can get involved in the charter review process. There are robust web pages that include application information, background on charter review, and FAQs for both the general process, for those in the general public, and for the committee specifically, for those who are interested in applying. There will also be future information sessions to support application and community participation in the charter review. In addition to these robust online resources, we've also started to discuss community outreach, priorities, and strategy. Right now, these are just guiding principles, as a program coordinator will be hired soon to shepherd this process. We've been brainstorming about the approach to inclusive engagement that is early. It's focused on relationships, and it's focused on communities that are typically underrepresented in county processes, which includes East County and other community aspects of our communities. We've also discussed leveraging our community partners and those relationships to reach out to their constituents and communities. Much of this work is still to come. The program manager will be starting in July and will be heavily involved in the process. We hope to work with OCI to pass the baton of the work that we've done, update the new program coordinator, and integrate them into the process so they can start this process running. We will also be back in August to present lessons learned from the work that we did together and recommendations to the board, along with the rest of our Community Involvement Committee. Thank you so much for your time today, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you all so much again for all of the work that went into this and just the really great way that you both considered this, planned for it, and just are setting us up for success for this really important process. I'll go to the board to see who has any questions for you all. And we'll start with Commissioner Jones-Dickson.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here and just the amount of work that you put into this. I was a charter committee member for the city of Gresham, and I wish I would have had this amount of preparation and level of intentionality. I don't have any questions, but I do look forward to just supporting the work and inviting folks into the process, especially out there in District 4. And thank you, Dr. Perez, for just keeping our office involved and engaged in the work. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bram-Edwards.
Thanks for the presentation, and really appreciate the thoughtful approach so that we set everybody up for success. I actually have one question, but it's more for Amara and maybe for the commission in general. Should I wait?
Yeah, we can have Amara come up
Afterwards, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you all. Thank you for the work that's going into this. I think my office remains very committed to supporting however we can with the outreach as well. And I also just appreciate the focus on community engagement. It's coming from somebody else than me this time, so that's really helpful in this room. I think the one question I have, and if this isn't something you all have, that's fine, but everything doesn't always work out as planned, and if the application is not up on July 1, do we plan to extend so that it's open for a full 3 months? I'm getting a thumbs up behind you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's probably an Amada question, so yeah, good.
Wonderful. And then Amada, I'll have a few more questions for you when you come back up. Thank you all.
Thank you. Commissioner Moyer.
Thank you so much for your time working on this. This is nice to see this level of thoughtfulness for supporting a process, so thank you so much for that. As you guys were discussing candidates for who would make the strongest candidates, what is the thought process, and this, again, might be a Amada question, who will be advising the chair on evaluating the candidates? I mean, because clearly a lot of thought has been put into this. How is, I seriously doubt the chair scores everything by herself. So I guess my question is like, how do we take that thoughtfulness and how does it play out in the selection process? Yeah.
Lots of questions for you this morning, Amada.
Thank you for that question. So drawing from past charter review process, OCI has organized a panel of evaluators, so it is our role at the office to do the first evaluation of applications. Our process will include using the criteria as a rubric to evaluate answers on that application.
I'm sorry, Amada, can you state your name for the record?
Sorry, yeah, my name is Amada Perez, Director of the Office of Community Involvement. We will rank all of the applicants in Tier 1, 2, and 3, and then pass that to the chair as a starting place for her selection process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I guess my question is, have you yet determined what would lead to a Tier 1, a Tier 2, or a Tier 3? Like what lens will be applied? And if you don't know yet, that's also fine.
We will translate that criteria into an evaluation rubric that would allow us to be able to rank, like have our evaluators be able to give a number assigned to how well, if you will, the applicant responded to the question and how well it aligns to what the criteria outlines. So we will be using, the panel will be using a rubric.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the criteria what was on slide 13?
Yes.
The interest and experience
Yes.
that was in the presentation? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the main basis for it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, since you're up here, we can go back, and I know that there were a few folks that had questions for you,
Great,
Amada.
thank you.
Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Thanks. Question, looking at the timeline that you have, it doesn't look like it's not till February 2027 that there's the first meet and greet retreat. I'm wondering, and this is maybe a question for you and the commission, is whether the new chair should be making the selections since that group is not meeting till February 2027 when there'll be a new chair and a new commission, versus making the appointments now and then waiting 6 months?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that. I can tell you my opinion.
Maybe tell me what.
The rationale.
Because it just seems like there's huge
Yeah.
gap, and it, again, the charter is our governing document.
Right.
It seems like,
Yeah. Well, we have the application will close ideally October 1st. If there's a reason why we are unable to get the application on the 1st, that will get extended. If there is a reason why we actually don't think we have a diverse applicant pool, we might also keep it open until we can achieve that. The other is we're giving our office a month to evaluate those evaluations. Not that this will happen to us, but the city had 300 applications to evaluate. So we built in time with independent evaluation and then coming together as a group. So that would put us all the way to November. So the thinking is that people would be able to know that they were appointed before the end of the year, before the holidays, and potentially make more availability starting in February to be able to serve, in terms of the time commitment. So this is based purely on a programmatic sort of approach, and I think in terms of whether or not, the current chair or the new chair makes that decision, I think that's probably, yeah.
Yeah, and does the board approves
Yeah, I was
the,
gonna ask that
the
question.
board approves the.
That's right.
The appointments, like that, it comes to the board for approval?
Yeah, the board has to approve,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just a follow-on question, maybe this is a question for Jenny Madcore, and it's more theoretical or hypothetical. But the new chair could, since nobody had been seated yet, could theoretically appoint a set of members because the chair is the appointing authority?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if there's been no activity and the charter says, or ordinance says that the chair appoints, whoever the new chair is theoretically could appoint members or bring them forward to the commission.
So as far as timing goes, the chair, whoever is chair, or in the absence of the chair, the vice chair, would be bringing to this Board of County Commissioners a slate of candidates to approve to sit on the committee. And the timing of that is actually, when the board approves it, that's going to be up to the board. So for example, if this chair brought forward a slate of candidates and this board did not want to approve that slate of candidates until after the new year, then that matter could be postponed until after the year. And then the new chair would have the opportunity to either bring forward that same slate or a different slate.
Great, thank you.
More questions for Amada? Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on your response to Commissioner Moyer's question. Having been a part of many rating and ranking processes, sometimes you find at the end that your rating and ranking results in a less diverse pool of recommendations. And so is there, built in the timeline, the opportunity to kind of check if our rating and ranking is resulting in an equitable applicant pool?
Rating and ranking, so I think.
Because some of it, and I'll
Yeah.
just go a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
further, some of it depends on how you rank different things. So if there's different numbers for each of those criteria,
Yeah.
you may unintentionally end up with a very homogeneous group of folks that isn't representative of the county.
Right.
And not that it would be intentional, but that I've seen that happen with rating and ranking. And then, so is there, if that's the result, are we checking ourselves there and saying we actually have to go back and revisit our scoring because something is off here?
I think that's a good idea. I think, we are evaluating answers to questions. And I think we would, when closing the application, OCI will do an evaluation of whether or not we had a diverse applicant pool at large before evaluating. So I could see where we could add another one once the group has been selected based on their answers. I think what we want to be careful of is that we are not evaluating based on any lived experience and identities, which those will be redacted from the applications before we actually evaluate applications. But I hear the step that you're asking for.
Yeah, and it's like the one in particular that sticks out to me is experience conducting research.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would encourage us to have some sort of process there to just take a look and see what
Right.
our results are from the rubric, particularly if it's scored or weighted higher than other ones.
Right, yeah. And why we tried to include personal research in there too, if people did research on their family or anytime they're engaging in sort of hearing from others and using that sort of information to inform recommendations and decisions.
You will need to define.
Yep, exactly. That kind of language is very different. I might not apply because I didn't think I qualified.
Yeah.
If I think of just research the way that it's defined generally, but your definition is actually more broad.
Yes.
But even with it saying personal, I wouldn't necessarily take that away.
Okay, thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
One other question. Now, I know there were some items that the last charter review that didn't pass at the ballot, or things that maybe they just ran out of time on. Is there a plan to kind of bring that so that folks understand and aren't replicating work, but looking at if they're still interested in any of those to keep moving them forward?
The Charter Review Committee can make a determination if they want to go back and visit what was presented last time. Also, people can bring those issues to the Charter Review Committee to consider. I think that's sort of what their charge is to determine what they want, what issues they want to investigate, either new ones or past ones or ones that are presented to them.
Okay. What languages are we going to do translation in for the application?
We have a list of the languages that are sort of best
The most
practices.
commonly used?
Yeah.
Perfect,
Yeah.
okay. And I think last time there was a consulting firm involved in some of the community engagement. Is that the plan again this year? I don't think we can expect the volunteer board to go do a bunch of community engagement events without some support, and
Right.
you're still a small but mighty office.
Thank you. That will be part of next year's budget request from the board, because that will be moving into year 2, where we will be asking for support to do the public input, since that is such a critical piece of this project.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Any more questions for Amada or the CIC subcommittee?
This is a little bit of follow-on. Again, I thought this is a super thoughtful process, and I agree with Commissioner John Sixon that I think this will set people up well. In terms of and this kind of goes to the scoring and the tiers, are you contemplating weighting any of these particular criteria or competencies or experiences differently, or is it just across the board they'd all be weighted equally?
That's a good question. This is something that we have waited for our new person who we're hiring to do. We really wanted to be able to pass the baton with a good foundation, but we are hopeful that we have someone who has experience in doing that work and will help us to build a rubric that may or may not be weighted, but we can certainly bring that to all of your offices for feedback before that gets utilized.
Great. I mean, because that is one way, I think, in which you can both encourage a diverse pool and end up with a diverse set of applicants. It also, I think it's important to do it with obviously a lot of thought, because you're saying by waiting, it becomes like these things maybe one thing may be more important, but it also then does tell people, like, here's what the focus is, or here's things that we think, attributes that we think are really important. So I'll be interested if you land on a weighting, what that is.
From our discussions, go ahead.
Renee Bell, for the record. I was just going to say, when we were going through the questions, our thought process on that too was when we set a word limit, that also indicates the weight of the question. So if a question is 100 words where another one is 250, it indicates that that's maybe more important for them to share their experience. And also, I really appreciate your feedback on the question about research. We definitely spent some time on that one, and maybe should visit the exact verbiage of that question, because it's not just like academic research or for a job, but at the same time, having prior experience with research or reading very dense material and spending all this time on it is important. So it's been interesting getting those questions together.
Yeah. And I would just add to that is I remember in our conversations beyond the word count, there was no priority indicator. So the criteria itself, not one was more important than the other. And I think that the word count was more about spending time on answers and how much to share, but not that that was a more important answer than other answers. So again, it's a little, for us, again, waiting for this person to start, hopefully that we will be doing that work, continue to work with the CIC on that rubric.
Thanks.
I have a follow-up to Commissioner Burnham-Edwards' line of questioning, and I have concern. I completely appreciate the criteria, but I can look at that and say that will advantage people with higher education. I mean, it's a survey response, which might be fine, but that has its own consequences that I get nervous about, and that is making sure that this charter review committee is not dominated by one social class, particularly the wealthiest. Because we do taxation and we do resource distribution, and I don't think all people of all classes agree on that balance. And so wanting to make sure, if we're going to say, how does our county function and how is power distributed, I get nervous about that. So, that's one that it, often when we ask demographic questions, income is not asked, so I would ask to include it. And I think we need to be clear when seeking written responses, which of course we're going to, there is going to be a dominant culture bias toward, a higher academic approach to writing. I would be shocked if there wasn't. And that in and of itself really is going to potentially be a barrier for representation from a lot of groups, like people with disabilities, people who did not have access to higher education, people who English is, even if we're doing in translation, like, I think we just got to be real that it's going to bias it. And I'm not an expert on how you balance those things and still have, a committee who's going to do this type of dense work. So,
Yeah.
But I flag it because I think often class in these type of things end up being the least diverse aspect.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner. Our office does ask about class background for all of the 3 advisory committees that we support, and it is also sort of universal questions that are part of the Better Impact Volunteer Management. So system that many of our offices are now adopting to support volunteerism and participation. So we can certainly present that indicator when we evaluate the diverse pool that we have after the application is closed.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think so thank you so much again for all of the work on this. Thanks for just the really good thinking and deep thinking on this. And this is a really critical part of the, just how this county government runs, to have this charter review process, and so setting us up for success, which is really a truly long process. I mean, this got started over 2 full years before anything would be going to the ballot for this, but that we're set up for success, that we're being planful and trying to be as inclusive as possible to have to really meet the moment in terms of the charter review process is wonderful. So thank you all so much for your help and all your great work on this. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break so we can reset for our work session format, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. We're in recess. Hello, hello. We are back in action. Welcome back. Okay, so we are now moving on to our second briefing topic of the morning, which is a work session to discuss the board's consideration for investment in the renovation of the Moda Center Arena. Today, we'll have an opportunity to consider Multnomah County's potential investment in the renovation. This is also an opportunity to discuss the board's priorities for community benefits, labor, and how the county residents and generations to come will benefit from a renovated Moda Center Arena. For me personally, I see this as a generational investment opportunity that is aligned with the county's mission to improve the well-being of residents by providing public services that promote health, safety, and economic well-being and stability. I believe that we all are going to benefit from a renovated Moda Center. It is a crucial economic engine for our county, creating good-paying jobs and generating revenue that fund critical public services. It's a place that brings people together, whether to watch a Portland Fire or Trailblazers game, or to celebrate the culture, music, and food through events like El Grito Portland. We also have an opportunity to leverage this renovation with the transformational work happening in Lower Albina with the 1803 Fund and the Albina Vision Trust. However, when talking about such a large-scale project and the significant investment the county is being asked to give, there are many considerations on the benefit to our community that should happen as a result. These include during the construction of the facility itself, the ongoing job opportunities, the impact on the neighborhood, and of course, the potential benefits for local government. I'm looking forward to delving into that conversation as a board today. We have a number of guests here today, including Donnie Oliveira, the Deputy City Administrator from the City of Portland, and Michael Alexander from the Albina Vision Trust. The Blazers organization was scheduled to be here today, but canceled their attendance this morning. I've already shared my displeasure with the Blazers President, Dwayne Hankins, about that. They are obviously a very critical part of this conversation. Tomorrow, I'm going to be meeting with many of the players in this conversation at a public event, and I'll make clear that in order to receive funding from Multnomah County, we need to have our questions answered directly. I do want to note we do have Eben Jundef Hoffer, and I'm sorry if I said that name wrong, from Council President Dumpy's office here as well, so thank you for being here. We have Stacy Bork from my office and Eric Ariana, Multnomah County CFO, here today to walk through some of the nuts and bolts of this event. I do know that Mike Alexander has a hard stop at 11 o'clock, so I did want to invite him to come up and provide some testimony whenever that's great. So I don't know how long your presentation is going to take, but I just want to be mindful of that time. Okay, thank you.
Chair, it just feels important to say that I think the planning on this with the Blazers was problematic, and it is draft day, so the idea that we didn't schedule around what we knew would be an extremely busy day for them and then to blame them for not being here is frustrating. I absolutely want to hear directly from the Blazers, but I also think that this could have been planned better.
So we had multiple conversations with about this coming up, and realizing it was a busy day, there was a commitment to have somebody here from the Blazers, and then found out this morning that that wasn't going to be possible. So yes, I do want to note that it is draft day, but there were conversations around that.
That is simply not the same thing that they're saying, and I think that's a problem.
Regardless of why they're not here, we absolutely need to have a meeting where they're here, and I would suggest multiple meetings. I have a lot of, I have a lot of questions that specifically are to the Blazers, even though our agreement is with the city. I think there's a lot of holes in the materials that they provided us, then gaps in information that we're going to have filled in order to be able to assess whether what size of the investment is made.
Yeah.
So just putting a placeholder, but for whatever reason why they're not here, they need to be here at a future meeting. And somebody who is authorized to speak for the organization, not that they have to go back and check or they can't speak for it. They need to be able to speak for their organization. And it can't also be in a private meeting this week.
Yes, we'll make it clear that we want to have our questions answered directly and publicly, as I stated. Okay, Mike Alexander, do you want to come up and provide your testimony since you have a time limit this morning? Don't forget to state your name.
Well, good morning. For the record, my name is Mike Alexander, and I'm speaking on behalf of AVT, the Urbana Vision Trust, where I have the privilege to serve as their board chair. Chair Peterson and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to offer comments today. The renovation of Moda Center is an important public investment that asks us to consider what does it mean to invest in a place that has already given so much and lost so much. Lower Albina helped build this city. It was once the cultural and economic center for Black Portland, but regrettably later became the site of repeated public decisions that displaced families, fragmented community, and interrupted the transfer of opportunity across generations. Today, we have a rare opportunity to do something different, not to undo history because we cannot, but to create a future that reflects what we can learn and live in a way that is better aligned with our values and our aspirations as a community. AVT has spent years building a community-led vision for 94 acres of Lower Albina. We believe this arena investment can become more than a renovation project. It can become foundation of a district strategy that reconnects growth with belonging and development with restoration. We're here today to lend our support for the completion of an arena deal. We want to make sure you don't lose sight of the opportunity to also support a district deal as well. We also hope you will leverage your partnership with the City of Portland to ensure that AVT has access to additional development rights in the district. We understand this is a pivotal time that will ultimately shape the next chapter of one of Portland's defining neighborhoods. This moment gives us all the opportunity to shape an arena and district deal that sets the bar for binding together a major civic investment with the nation's largest restorative development project. Imagine a district where an iconic arena sits inside a neighborhood that is growing, welcoming back families, creating new opportunity, and becoming more connected and vibrant with each generation. This is not only possible, it is within reach, and more specifically, it is within your reach. Commissioners, as you consider the agreement, we ask you for a clear signal that the future of Lower Albina will be shaped not only by what gets renovated, but equally by what gets restored. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I think just while you're here, one of the things that stood out to me in this bridge agreement was Rip City Management having development rights on adjacent parcels, and that to me would be a huge community benefit to shift that those development rights away from Rip City Management. So it's definitely something that's on my list of community benefits that we'll be talking about, but I wanted to say that before I know you got to leave.
Well, we appreciate that, and we know that we have the opportunity to have the same goals that has guided AVT over the last 10 years, be a part of the development of the district and not leave it to market forces.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there already an agreement to shift the development rights, or are you asking us to push for that? Sorry.
We're asking you to push for it, and
Okay.
it's been cultivated in Salem as well.
But right now, there's no agreement.
Not hard and fast, no.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. All right.
Good morning. I'm Stacy Bork. I use she and her pronouns, Deputy Chief of Staff to Chair Vega Peterson. So Eric and I are going to get this work session kicked off. We're going to start with just a quick walkthrough of the proposed investment from Multnomah County. And this is the first time, as the chair mentioned, that this board has had a public opportunity to discuss the the county's potential investment in a Moda Center renovation. And so really the opportunity that we're here today to take is to be able to hear from the board about your priorities, what you would like to see in an agreement, an IGA with the City of Portland as they work to negotiate tenant lease with RIP City Management and the Blazers organization as the largest and kind of anchor tenant within the Moda Center. Donnie from the city is here, and I'm sure will find his way up to this table rather quickly in the discussion. You don't have to come now, Donnie, yet. You can if you want to, but really want to take this as an opportunity to hear from the board and be able to answer questions that we can, and also make a commitment to get back to this board with questions that we can't answer for today, but really starting a conversation and for this the commission. So thank you very much for having us, and Eric's going to get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy. For the record, Eric Arellano, Chief Financial Officer. And so I'm going to do a kind of high-level run-through of at least to date, the preliminary verbal commitments on the county's investment as it pertains to the Moda renovation project. I will note that
Who made those commitments? Who made those commitments? How formal, like, I don't know. Commitment is a big word, so I'm wondering whom made those commitments.
So as part of the negotiation with the city and the state, this was the proposal that was put forward for this, for the counties.
Okay, but it's not, like we have committed to nothing formally, correct?
No, I mean, no, this board has to approve
Yeah.
everything that we
I just
put
want to
forward.
make, I don't want to use words that may have an unclear meaning. Thanks.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I was going to also say to that is that, again, these are preliminary, at least with the revenue sources that we're talking about now. It's subject to an IGA with the City of Portland. That would be subject to the board's approval before any action. It would also involve us having to make tax code changes as it relates to one of our sources of revenue, again, subject to board approval, and then also with both our sources of revenue that, again, are in a preliminary funding plan, we'd have to go through a budgetary action by the board to authorize that usage for this particular purpose. So there are layers to the process that's going to come before this board before anything actually happens. But what I'm going to walk through, again, is a preliminary funding plan for the Moda renovation project. I'm going to first kind of talk about the individual revenue sources. The first one is...
So Eric, before you get started, is it helpful to have the funding summary sheet up on there? So Emily, would you mind in the meeting materials putting up the Northeast Venue preliminary funding summary?
And while it's being put up, I just have an additional ask that I was going to ask later on, but to have because some of this is out years, and it's my understanding that the ask extends to 2043, to have like a year by year what the expectation or how this plays out on a year by year basis.
Yeah, I'll try to walk through those pieces, Commissioner, but if I miss it, please.
Yeah, just so visually, because I mean, there's this rush, there has been this rush to get the county to act, and actually the majority of it is post-2030.
So it would be helpful in this document to have another page that shows a year of.
Yeah, just like the braided funding year by year, because to have it matched up.
Read.
Yes.
To have it also actually matched up with the expenditures.
I hear you. Yep. So,
Can I don't know, hopefully someone's taking notes on what we're asking for.
We are all taking notes.
Thank you. Can we break out and add a column that's not the amount of which MODA would receive in our portion, but how much we will actually pay? Because I think this implies that we would pay 101.6 million, but actually, we've got about,
And I can talk about that.
yeah,
but we
40
can't.
million
Yeah.
additional debt service, so it's, for us, it's not that, it's not 101, or one,
Yep.
yeah, whatever, you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. So I'll make sure that I had planned to kind of talk about that, but we can definitely add that piece to there. The first revenue source is Multnomah County has a motor vehicle rental tax of 17% of that motor vehicle rental tax. There is a 2.5% surcharge that was enacted many years ago. That when it was enacted, it was essentially used to support bonds that were issued for the renovation of the Oregon Convention Center. And that revenue source flows through our Visitor Development Fund with a trust. And those bonds for the Oregon Convention Center fully mature in 2030. But after that, that surcharge opens up. And so that's our first revenue source that we're talking about. And I'll get into some more specifics around that. The second revenue source that we're talking about is the county's business income tax. It's a 2% tax. And from the sale of the franchise, proceeds from that sale that we had identified, subject to what we get, that would be one-time only money that we would allocate to this project. So again, very high level, those are the two revenue sources that we're talking about. I'll go through each one, but I'm going to first start with, I'm going to go by to two different buckets. One of them is for the actual renovation of the Moda Center, and the other one is for ongoing maintenance for the Moda Center over the term of the lease. And so starting with the capital renovation, there is planned $35 million in one-time only business income tax, again, that would come from the sale of the team, that would be going to the renovation. This is up to $35 million. So if the county were to receive more than $35 million, it's only up to $35 million. And if we were to receive less than $35 million, obviously we provide less than that amount. It's only subject to what we receive, and up to $35 million. And that would be a direct allocation to the project. In terms of timing, maybe to what you said, Commissioner, I think there's still some work being done around the timing of those revenue sources coming in, how we measure them, how we evaluate them in coordination with the City of Portland.
So just a clarification, how it had been talked about earlier was the county was going to take the first $5 million and it was going to be up to $40 million, which is an important distinction because it would imply that if there was some proceeds this next year, there would be $5 million to the county. And I guess just also an asterisk because part of it would go to potentially to the East County cities, that it'd actually be more than $5 million. But it wasn't like the first $35 million, they just, in the discussions that I've heard, that's not, it wasn't $35 million.
Well,
It's a distinction, but it's like, you know, we just cut so much, you know, that's half of the deficit we had this past year. So I don't want to.
Yeah. As it currently stands, a good point, Commissioner, but it currently stands, this, again, these are estimates, but what the county anticipated from the sale of the team is roughly around $40 million. Knowing that, at least in terms of this preliminary funding plan, $35 million, up to $35 million would be going to the capital renovation currently, so.
I also just want to be super clear. There is no scenario where the East County cities don't get paid. We already, that is an IGA we have with them and an agreement. So that amount that we would owe to the East County cities, that's already being considered.
It's carved
Okay,
out.
but it's not on here. And again, that first $5 million was also contemplated as like money to the county.
Yeah, and that's currently, and Commissioner, you're correct that that was discussed, but that's not currently in the plan. That's not the current plan. And then to the chair's point, in looking at the 40 million overall, and I'll get to the other piece around the maintenance. There's 1.6 for the maintenance and then 35 for the capital renovation. When looking at the 40 million and implying the percentage that we're required to provide the East County cities, that's roughly around 3.4 million of the 40 million that's been carved out. So they're not part of the equation in terms of this. This is all county money we're talking about in terms of business income tax. We wouldn't have to change our IGA, and we're still making those commitments currently with the plan. So,
I'm sorry, did you say that it's not currently contemplated, the first 5 million to go to the county?
not currently, no.
Okay. Then that's like very different than what's been discussed for 6 months. Who decided? I'm not looking at it. Who decided that?
So this is about the dollars that the county would be putting in for the Moda Center renovation. It doesn't contemplate dollars that would be going to the county, and it doesn't contemplate dollars that would be going to the East County cities. This is just what our plan is. So if you want to have a broader explanation of how those dollars would be based on the estimate of what the total tax generated would be, we can add that narrative to this, but this is just looking at the dollars that are allocated to Moda Center, not other pieces of it.
Well, I think part of the point is, and this isn't for you, but part of the point that I'm hearing is that because of the 3.2 going to East counties, which nobody is saying we shouldn't do, it results in less coming to the county, so it's not that 5 million. It should actually be 8.2 million that the county's then taking before funding the Moda Center from earlier conversations.
If the board wants to ensure that we get 5 million, right? I mean, based on the estimates, like we as the county, like if we got a business income tax for $20 million, part of that 20 million comes to the county, but part of, all of that comes to the county, but part of that also goes to the East County cities. So that's something for this board to contemplate. If it's important that we do get 5, we can talk about that. But we have an obligation as Multnomah County to provide East County cities a percentage of any BIT that comes in, no matter what the source.
And that's
I don't think there was ever any disagreement, but there's been no scenario ever presented that the first dollar of a tax transaction went into the stadium fund or the arena fund.
So we're having the conversation about what it looks like right now.
But Eric said that like it's not currently contemplated. I'm just saying, I've never heard it not contemplated, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
Absolutely.
But if you're just stating what's current, but I'm just saying, I've never heard that, so I'm just putting a clear marker that, and if this is what today's about, like we're just say what.
Yeah, and that's fair. I also want to be fair, like not everybody has been involved in all the previous conversations, so this is the. Yes, exactly. So, thank you. So that's why this is what we're talking about, and this is what we're working from right now.
So just, I think to that, Commissioner Brim Edwards, just going through the current state, it could change, possibly based on the board direction in terms of that approach. But I do remember it being discussed of a carve-out on the first 5 million that was received. Again, within the capital renovation bucket, the second source of revenue, like I mentioned, is our motor vehicle rental tax surcharge, 2.5%. That, again, would not be available until to that fiscal year 2031 because it's committed to that IGA for the VDF for the retirement OCC bonds. And so part of this commitment, we committed to issuing debt in the amount, principal amount of $53 million. And so to get to that $53 million over a 20-year term, we estimated what the annual debt service would be, average debt service, and to get to that 53 million, our annual debt service would be about 4.5 million. I really want to stress, and I'll continue to stress, these are estimates based on current interest rates. We always, as a best practice, we cushion that because interest rates are so volatile, especially in this current environment with the Fed. I will note that of that 4.5 million estimate and over a 20-year term, and I'll get to that point later, Commissioner, of what I'm providing. I want to make sure I cover it. I'm talking about right now as I go through these amounts, this is what would be going to the project, which is different from the total cost to the county over the term of whatever is approved. And I'll get to that piece. So from the total amount of capital renovation dollars is $88 million between the $35 million of the business income tax and then the $53 million in principal value from a debt service over a 20-year term.
So, again, these are estimates.
Yep.
But that means the county, over the life of this, would be putting in $128 million based on the estimates.
Yeah, so.
138, sorry.
Yeah, so our total, and I'll get to the other pieces too, but our total current commitment is 100.6 million, right? If you factor in a 20-year term bond based on interest rates that I ran, we would have an additional $37 million in county costs, because that's 4.5 million in addition to the other commitments is a total about 138.6 million total cost of the county. That doesn't mean 138 million is going to the project. It's just there's a cost of that debt issuance over that 20-year term. So cost of the county, 138.6 million, but input to the project, 101.6 million.
Is the city bonding any of their dollars?
Not currently. No, not that I.
So we would actually have a larger contribution than the city?
No. No.
Not to the project. We'd be putting more tax dollars into the initiative. It looks like they have 120.
For the capital renovation. I guess when you're asked the question, I took it all in, because there's an ongoing maintenance commitment as well. So, but
that's not bond.
Yeah, no. I think my understanding, and it's better for the city to confirm that, but all our discussions with our counterparts, the city of Portland, is that there is no plan to issue any debt on their side. And the only other debt issuance. Thank you.
I think the mayor sent something out this morning, a pretty broad communication that said the city was just putting 120 million in. That's at least in my inbox.
Yeah, so we have the expert on this from the city here to talk a little bit about what the city's total contribution looks like. So we're talking about two things, right? We're talking about the capital renovation dollars, and then there's also dollars that are contemplated for ongoing maintenance.
Correct. Thank you.
And operation.
Yeah. Donnie Oliveira, for the record. I'm with the City of Portland. I'm the Deputy City Administrator for Community and Economic Development, Commissioner. So I'll just immediately respond to the mayor's newsletter that you referred to, was specifically referring to the $120 million of city investment on the initial capital stack for the renovation. What Eric was also referencing, it's on the spreadsheet, is the city's also committing around $275 million in ongoing maintenance and investments. So even once you have a renovated building, there's always improvements that are necessary to keep the building up to today's standards. And so that investment has been committed as well from the city. So that total brings us closer to $400 million.
And sorry, how is that being paid for?
That's out of Spectator Venues Fund. So that's revenue generated from ticket sales of both basketball teams, concerts, and garage.
Right, so there's revenue coming in. I'm just looking at the mayor's newsletter. It says 120 million. Those are things that are generated from the activity of the arena versus the county. This is activity, the tax money is generated by something else.
Yeah, motor vehicle rental tax.
Can I ask some?
Yeah, it's a work session. So.
Let's do it. Okay. see, in our timeline, there's a time period in which there will be a lease negotiation with the operator, which we're contemplating being RIP City Management. What, in our current operation, not ours, your current lease extension, who is responsible for building upgrade?
Great question, Commissioner. So under the current bridge agreement, we've established a financial commitment from the city and RIP City Management, the Blazers, for agreed upon projects, improvements that the city would chip in 50% for. Anything outside of that list, 100% is done by the Blazers.
And not knowing that specific list, I did look at the 180-page document from related to the upgrades needed, or I also think it's fair to say repair and maintenance, or potentially unmet ongoing maintenance, and just, trying to divide who was responsible for things that should have been done from what an upgrade is and the benefit. I'm curious, in your conversations with the Blazers, is there a laundry list of things that you guys or they were responsible for that they have not done to this point? And how are we drawing a line from what they are going to pay for because that was their contractual obligation versus, okay, this is renovation costs. This is not something that should have been covered under a previous agreement. I have some of those type of like nitty gritty issues of like, who's going to ultimately be responsible economically for everything. I've heard rumors. I have deep concerns about those rumors, that is going to be the taxpayer in perpetuity, but it hasn't been negotiated yet, so it could be a lot of things. But yeah, so how are we making a clean transition from obligations under your current lease agreement to what would be in a new deal? Because it's not the county, we are not a party to what was supposed to be done.
All right. I'm going to take a stab at my initial response, and you can course correct me along the way. So we're really in year two, wrapping up year two of the dynamic where the city is now the owner of the facility. So up until 2024, the Blazers' prior ownership, they were responsible for the upkeep. I mean, we also contributed as well, but it was a very different dynamic. So anything that, to your point, that was in the facilities condition assessment that wasn't improved as necessary, you could have said, yeah, that was a burden that the old owner should have carried, didn't happen. We're not going to relitigate why that didn't happen or not, but the reality is we are here today, and we see over the next 20 years, the building needs about $500 million in ongoing improvements, investments to keep it a first, grade A, world-class, first-rate facility for concerts and basketball activities, and maybe one day hockey if that's something the city wants to contemplate. Having said that, what you're looking at when we say those list of things are recommendations from engineers and architects about this is what you need to do at the bare minimum to keep this facility up to what we consider to be modern standards. It's an old building, so we have a higher investment curve to catch up. And then once we're up to that point, then those ongoing investments are going to be more in line with what other facilities are going to be invested in at the same case. Because this is very much a keeping up with the Joneses dynamic. Arenas all around the country are looking at each other to see who does what. We just got a new scoreboard that was built on a scoreboard that was installed by another arena across the country, and some new arena is going to look at ours and improve upon ours. And that's just going to be the dynamic of this arena going forward. But to answer your question, when it gets down to the list of things that we're talking about, that will be part of the term sheet. And I also want to just name this because it hasn't come up yet. We're also currently in a negotiation with the state to establish the joint authority at which point the state will also have ownership and an opinion about the list of things that we're prioritizing with public dollars. So there'll be another stakeholder that's really negotiating with us on this journey. But that will be part of the term sheet, is the responsibility of the public side to prioritize what investments the Blazers are going to make related to the condition assessment.
So while I have zero desire to have ownership in the arena and the ongoing maintenance needs of it, is it contemplated how the county where will we be and at which tables? And part of what I'm struggling with is, one, I want to be clear, I want us to figure out how to get this done.
Thank you.
Two, I want it to be done with community benefits. There's a number of things. We talked a little bit about the development of other parcels, but there's a lot more. Some of that requires certain types of renovations to be made so that there are more activities happening in the arena, so that we move from some of these part-time jobs to actual full-time jobs with opportunity to unionize and actually get the full benefits of what that can look like. But there's really specific things that I'm hearing need to happen, and I still don't have anything that tells me this is what the county dollars or what the dollars for a renovation are going for. And when I read that very long report as well, it's unclear to me in there that those seem like this is needed maintenance as opposed to this is an upgrade. And that's where I think it's a little tricky. We have to be able to tell folks, not just people in our community, but also the employees of Multnomah County, what exactly we're paying for. And I just don't understand when and how we'll be a part of those conversations.
That is a fair question. It's a question that, the City of Portland Council is also asking of us as well, us being the city administration, our state partners, and the Blazers, of course, and the Blazers management. Our opportunity is this. We know we have to make upgrades to the arena regardless of an NBA franchise being there or not. So let's contemplate a scenario where the Blazers say, nope, we don't want to be here anymore, and they leave. We still have to invest in that arena, that we still have the fire, and we still want to make sure our city is getting, those concerts that we want to see that make up a majority of the nights at the arena, by the way. How the dollars get spent, first, address that, because I have to do the community benefit second. How those dollars get spent is really a product of what our values are and where we want to prioritize. When we tell the Blazers ownership that we want to make sure our building's safe, it's resilient, becomes a space for climate resiliency. So there's battery storage, there's on-site generation, we have a better transportation system around there. Those are the things that we can press for as a part of the renovation. The Blazers are going to have their own preferences about upgrading, ways to make money, to squeeze as much revenue out as they can, right? That's just the practical nature of a business. That's going to be part of the negotiation, what we prioritize dollars, what the dollars are spent on. The second piece of that, though, is how we use the building. And that gets back to the community benefits question you asked, Commissioner. So it's not just the land use, the development rights that we're going to be partnering with other partners on. So I don't want to presume all partners haven't come to the table yet. It's also, what is the facility used for when it's not a basketball game or a concert? How does the public have access? How does the public benefit from that whole development around the area? How does the communities benefit economically? Those questions we can answer in our community benefits agreement that the Blazers have been are willing to develop with us as well. And that might take a lot longer to develop over time as you all get more clarity on what you want to see, our council does, and of course the state. And then going back to your very first question is what the county's role is. We're hoping, I'm speaking way out of turn here, so this is me, have a little hopium projecting what this looks like, is that the city and county IGA is very clear about what you all need to see in a term sheet, in a final definitive agreement document set. That's built into the IGA, and then the city carries that water on your behalf as a part of our negotiations with the state. That would be the ideal, I think, and how we follow up with how the dollars are being spent. That can be built into the IGA for reporting mechanism, because I'm sure we'll have the same request from city council and the state. But that would be the ideal model, that we're representing your interests as we negotiate on behalf of the other governments.
Thank you. I think one thing I would say is I designed and ran the community benefits on the Interstate Bridge project. It takes a couple of years.
Yes.
And that's not a conversation that I want us, it doesn't generally happen before we know, like we knew what the cost of the project would be, right? And then we started the conversation. but it's really important who's at that table, how it's designed and run, who facilitates it, and deals with the different power dynamics in the room, but also that there's some clear things that I would want to see in the IGA, and I guess I would say, what is the plan on the community benefits agreement and convening that? It sounds like we will do a PLA separate from a CBA, which is fine. A lot of them look that way. But that can't just be to me, just having that in an IGA with you all doesn't tell me the details that I would want to know on what that process will look like, who will be at the table, when it will start. If we don't put timelines on things, they tend to get stuck in bureaucracy, right?
Totally.
So those are some of the pieces that I'm also interested in, if you have those answers now too.
Thank you for asking that question. May I speak more broadly to the timeline first, then drill into that challenge? So I think Commissioner Burnett-Ridgeway had asked about the urgency of this timeline we're in right now. And while August 12th from our end for the term sheet at council is somewhat arbitrary, it's not where we're going. So the practicality of where we're at is those state dollars, that $365 million that the state put up as a bond, they need definitive commitments from the city and county to issue those bonds in early '27. So we're working with the state and the Department of Justice to get clarity on what exactly they need to see in an ordinance from the city to start the beginning of the process of underwriting that bond. If they don't get it by December, then that just pushes the whole timeline out for the issuance of the bond. So that is really what's the marker that we're aiming for, and that's the why of the timeline. But given that timeline, that is not enough time for us to flush out a complete CBA, and we know that. So the idea of the sequencing of steps is we have an initial term sheet from the city of Portland City Council that defines what the parameters of the term sheet regarding the financings from the city, ideally from the county, but we have a little bit more runway with you all, and what's inbounds and out of bounds from relation to what's going to be in a CBA, relation to labor, sustainability, any of the elements that the government bodies want to see as a part, without the details, because that's just the first stage gate. The next one is we're calling the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. That will have a lot more details. That starts to get into the very much specifics. That'll have the relocation penalties if they want to move in the middle of the lease. It'll get really specific into those sorts of terms, so that at that point, everybody knows this is the final terms of the deal. This is what the money's getting you. Here's sort of the blueprints and the engineering specs. We know definitively this is what the product's going to look like when the dust settles on a renovation, and this is what the investment protocols are going to be for determining what we're prioritizing ongoing for maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, we know that by that point, a development agreement won't be complete. As we talk about the parcels that the city owns around, we'll still be working on that, but we'll have some clarity and direction from the MOU, and that larger CBA will still be in progress, because in truth, this is going to be a build your bike as you ride it. We'll have some North Stars that we know we want to get done, but the truth is, as we start to see what the MODA Center is going to be, we're probably going to learn more about what opportunities there are to take as many community benefits as we can get over time. So I just want to offer that we are committed to the CBA, but want to do it right and not rush it to meet this other timeline that is moving way faster than, frankly, the CBA, can get anything out of.
I'd like to, I should remember.
I'm going to say something, and I'm going to preface it by saying I know the joy that New Yorkers had this last week with the Knicks, because I was on Broadway in 1977 when the Blazers had their championship parade. I mean, it's a great thing to happen to a community. So that's my preface. Okay. And I'm a huge Blazer fan, Fire fan. So having said that, this entire conversation for months has been about the amount of money that's being expected for the county, from the county side, sure, for the county to be put in. And there's been so little discussion about what the county, when we laid out our requirements, the county was the first entity to put in writing, like, here are some requirements that we'll want to see. And, I'm still looking at it, materials that don't have any of that information. I mean, we didn't get a piece of paper from the Blazers, until the first week of the legislative session, and it was a one-pager. And I think from the county's perspective, to do our fiduciary duty, we need to see what that looks like. I went through and looked through the economic analysis. So I was like, what's the return on investment for our money? Like, this is the thinnest, vaguest document that I've ever seen. I've done a bunch of these with my previous employer because they're usually required by local jurisdictions. Tell us exactly how many direct jobs, what the salary ranges are for each of the increments of the job classes, what the benefits package is, whether there's health insurance or anything like that. This states that there's 5,000 jobs. There's no breakout, no breakout. So I think this is incumbent, I think, on the county, is like, we need all the detailed information because this makes a lot of sweeping statements about numbers of jobs and economic impact. And frankly, I think what we're being sold is jobs that are part-time jobs without benefits packages. And that actually has a cost to the county, not a benefit. And frankly, people making part-time wages without benefits aren't even going to be able to afford to live in Multnomah County. So from my perspective, like, there's no blank check. That we need to see actually what the return on investment is to the county before making a commitment. I sat in a lot of meetings where I heard where the city has benefited for a long period of time from Paul Allen owning the facility, the city getting the parking and the tickets and the suite revenues annually, but the county hasn't had any of that. And the county also, when it got transferred, the arena got transferred to the Blazers, or from the Blazers to the city, we lost the property, the property tax. So I'm going to want to see a very rigorous, like, what's the ROI for this community if we're giving up funds that could go to a whole, we just went through months of talking about how we didn't have any money for capital projects. Not that I want to put this money into a vector control, but we talked about what our capital needs and all our operating needs. And I don't see, like, this doesn't make the case to me that the county should have such a large, being asked for such a large investment. And, early on, the county put way back in the legislative session, the fact that we needed to have a PLA and we needed to see a multi-union labor harmony agreement for operations and maintenance. And not just for that the PLA, not just for the initial construction, but the ongoing. And I understand there's a letter, but we haven't seen anything on the labor harmony, and that actually is probably the jobs that also currently pay the least with fewest benefits. So I think there's a lot more information. So I'm disappointed the Blazers aren't here today to be able to share, like, how many Blazer employees are there? How many RIP City management employees are there? What's the pay and benefits package? And then all the contractors, security, custodial, concessions, all those other jobs that they seem to be counting in the 5,000 and selling to us is like, here's what you're going to get, is like, what do those pay, and are people getting actually a living wage and benefits? So that's what I'm going to want to see before we have a lot more discussions. And I'm appreciative that there was a timeline that we were going to be voting on something like in the near future. And I feel like we have a lot of work to go. Mm-hmm. There's been so much discussion about how exactly the county, and Eric, you've done yeoman's work about where the money might come from, but not on like what the benefit actually is to the county and what we need to see in order to have an agreement.
And Donnie, I know we talked a little bit just about the economic analysis and this board's and the chair's specific request on wanting something more updated, wanting to really understand how does this investment benefit residents today and residents of the future of Multnomah County. Maybe you could speak a little bit to the timeline that you're working on related to that.
Yeah, thanks,
Well,
Stacey.
and I just, there's no way they write this report without the detail underneath it, so there's got to be, at a minimum, which ones are full-time and part-time, right? Like, that's something that I mean, it feels like we could get an email about that in a really quick follow-up as opposed to a whole new.
Yeah, they're just working on something, right? I was just wanting to just put a pin in that, but yes, I hear you really clearly, and I've heard it here.
This is not an economic,
Nor is
this is just I mean, this could be actually a one-pager. There's a lot of talking about the methodology, but very little detail. And again, I've done dozens of these.
And Commissioner, just for context, that wasn't designed for this moment in time. That's several years old. 3, yeah. And so as Stacy alluded to, we have been working with Crossroads for an updated model that contemplates our current zeitgeist around, economic benefits, challenges related to the whole Rose Quarter, by the way, because it is a district that we look at. So we're working with Crossroads to update that, to get those underlines for you. We can absolutely make sure that we tease out some of the county-specific questions that relate to like part-time staff versus.
Well, and volunteer staff, right? The Winter Hawk Shoes volunteer, so understanding that would be helpful.
Can I go?
Who's doing the updated economic?
It's going to be Crossroads.
Yes, it's a work session, so please.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
interrupting
Yeah.
is hard. I don't want to do that, but getting in there.
Please go ahead.
I just kind of want to lay out briefly for you, since you represent the city, a perspective that I haven't seen actually reflected in what we've sent over, or at least not to the degree that it's a deal breaker for me. I did see in the 2024 report the idea that we would make the area around Moda Center a TIF district. Therefore, even if there was for-profit activity that could have been property taxed, the county would not get that. I am an absolute, that is not an option. Like, I don't even want to be consulted. It's not an option for our portion. You want to go negotiate with school districts or whatever, that they don't get their revenue, that's up to you, but like, that's a no. Also, we were hurt, probably not as bad as the taxpayers of Portland, but we were hurt when the ownership moved from Paul Allen to the city because we lost property tax. It seems wild to be looking at spending, to us, $138.6 million to not have a revenue stream that we previously had. And obviously that's based on a valuation of, under $100 million, which is its current valuation. So I'm a pretty big stickler for a revenue stream. My preference would be the Multnomah County portion of property tax, a payment in lieu of. I would negotiate that as a hard number. I mean, I think obviously putting $600 million into a new arena increases its value. I'm not saying we need it on a $600 million valuation. It probably wouldn't have that, but like, what is a reasonable valuation for Multnomah County to get a payment in lieu of property tax? I fundamentally don't believe that we have the money to do this, of everything that's been put on the table. I think there's a real conversation about the motor vehicle rental tax. Interest rates are a huge bummer. The idea that we could only be actually giving $53 million to a capital fund, and yet the county would pay 90 is kind of a bad deal. It's not our fault, it's just the nature of interest rates right now, but like, I asked what would a municipal bond interest rate, and obviously I think Eric has been clear to say he can't promise anything, but was using a figure of 5.5%. Well, I'm lucky enough to have a mortgage that's 2% lower than that. Like, woo, that is not cheap. So I worry that alone is a huge financial commitment. The other money, I have a moral objection to, and that's because the business income tax that we're talking about could be used in general fund. And our general fund, projected general fund deficit over the next 4 years is $78 million. So I do think $35 million chipping away at that, like there are real services that a $78 million general fund hole is gonna force, just based off what we barely saved this budget session, which I think part of my feelings is that was so recent that I'm still in the sadness of seeing things shut. We barely saved 9 Sun schools. Barely. Frankly, a little bit of a sleight of hand. They're not in a better position for next year. It's not just gonna be 9 with $78 million holes. School-based mental health. We have an absolute mental health epidemic amongst our youth. I think we wish we could do more in that program right now. I don't know how that survives this. I don't know how access to drug and alcohol treatment, domestic violence shelters, victim services, like we will cut massive amounts of services in the next 4 years. And we are putting on the table $35 million that could shrink that. Still gonna be horrific cuts, still gonna need to be long-term sustainable. But like, I am kind of disgusted that we're being asked to. Because our revenue streams and our core obligations are very, very different from the city. They're a little bit different from the state because the state is just much broader, but we are the county. What we provide, what these funds could provide, are services to our most vulnerable. They are seniors, they are people with disabilities, they are people who cannot access health care, they are children. They are children. They're also our public safety system. And I am very confused why people thought, you know, who are the right partners for this? Whose mission as an organization aligns, whose revenue benefits from and therefore has a stake in the future of the Moda Center? I could say yes, the state does. Yes, the city clearly does. I might say possibly Metro does. I sure would never say the county, because we are being asked, and I'm kind of disgusted by the degree we are being asked to help make a profitable organization more profitable, or they're going to abandon our community, which has loved and supported this team for 30 plus years. I remember the bad rapping. I lived in Salem. I remember going to the Final Four and the finals. Like, it was huge. And I do know how much our community cares about the Blazers. But I am being asked, and as is everyone here, to inflict a continued loss of service on people who are the most economically insecure, to take from them, to give to a group of individuals who bought this team, who don't seem to have a love for us. We'd love to build that relationship. We'd love them to love us like we love their team, but would make an ask like that. It feels like extortion. It feels not a fair deal, not a market rate. Like, what is market rate about that? Like, I say this, it's not just to you, obviously, it's to my colleagues, it's to the, RIP City Management and Tom Dundon. We want you here. We are looking deep. We are looking deep. Like, rocks were turned over. But there is a point in which they are asking too much. And I'm sorry, but it is about $50 million less than this. And I was not part of the conversations that got to what has been talked about publicly. I have never supported this. I am supportive and have said, I am supportive of trying to be part of the solution. Because I think the Blazers are something here. Yes, I have feelings about the very minimal economic analysis that has been provided. I do look forward to what the legislature said they're funding to help us, but I won't say there isn't value to the love of a city. But I do ask those who are asking us, is there a value in not making the ask because of what it costs our community? Because don't pretend that if we do this, our cuts aren't deeper. They are. And what does the county do? It's not the same as the city. And there are very real debates about what funding streams are and are not associated with whatever the city chooses to do. And I respect that those are very difficult decisions for them to make. But for us to be asked to do this, knowing exactly where we have to cut, please, Tom Dundon, strike a fair balance. Be part of the funding. Give us a revenue stream that is frankly only right that we get a piece of property tax, because that is the only thing we have ever gotten from the Blazers being here as a government. And please, please, please care about the people who love your team.
So where are the specifics of, there were some specific asks in that there's been specific asks around summer community benefits. I've got a little pushback on an MOU. I've written a lot of them without attorneys, and they're not quite as enforceable as some of the other contracts we do. So I have concerns about that format. But it's like, I don't want to keep having this same conversation. So how are we progressing? When do we, some of the pieces around the dollars, right? Where is that going to be reflected in what we're actually bringing forward? Where are we going to see some of the specific community benefits that we've talked about? I think it's important to uplift again. The fire, right? Like, I want to know that the renovation includes what they need, and that I haven't heard anything about. I want to understand the pieces around, like I mentioned earlier, the concerts and the other events that can happen there. When do we get some of those details? I don't see that in the timeline. And that's both a city and a chair question.
I think the sequence of the questions. The last question first. So we are working with the Blazers on selecting the architect for the design. At the same time, we have the FCA, so we're not starting from scratch. And that will start to daylight some of the specifics of like, what are the dollars investing in, elevators and loading docks and, upgraded seats, whatever they may be, but that kind of punch list of things. So that we're hoping to have, again, at a very high level, because we're moving very quickly here, next month. The question about what's in a CBA, Stacy, did we share sort of the thing we put together that kind of has lists what goes into the term sheet? Did we share that? So commissioners, you may have gotten a document that showed just an example, pretty high level, of the types of terms and things that are in a term sheet. So things that are in our current bridge agreement, and then it was just a high level Word doc that kind of gave a punch list of these are the types of elements in a term sheet, things related to labor, things related to transportation. And we can make sure we get that to you. We produce this for city council as well, just so it gets to that question that Commissioner Singleton just asked, like what are the specifics in a CBA? What are the specifics in a term sheet? So you can see the types of things that are, everything related to labor, transportation, use of the building, sustainability, revenue streams potentially, investment from the private sector potentially, all naming rights, all those things that get contemplated in term sheets. There's a, just kind of like I said, a punch
Is
list.
that the 11-page proposed terms for Arena Bridge agreement from 2024?
No,
No, it doesn't look like it actually made it into the
Okay,
packet.
okay, I was gonna
So
say,
I'll
we
get
don't have
it
that.
shared out and we'll get it posted immediately following this
I have a
session.
question. You did receive the, sort of, at a very high level, some of the terms that the county?
Yes.
And none of those have been agreed to?
No, well, actually, I'm so glad you asked that. No negotiations have started. I want to be really clear about this. We have not gotten, this is the first conversation publicly we've had with the elected body in this case. The city council has their first work session tomorrow. So from us, we did not want to get ahead of these conversations. It would have been premature, and frankly, we would have been off a bit. Having said that, there are just some fundamentals that go into these term sheets, and we'd love for you all to take a look at that. Stacey, I'm sorry if I didn't get that to you. Just so you can get your head around like what's possible. And we have the things that are currently in the bridge agreement, things that are very common around the country, and then sort of like the unicorn things that some localities were able to extract from a deal, but they're not common, but they exist. And I'm sure there's things that we haven't contemplated yet that can be discussed. Once you all see that and start thinking about what you want to see, then we'll determine, okay, is that in the term sheet? Does that belong in a CBA that's derived from the term sheet? Is that in a development agreement? There's various documents that get produced as a part of this deal. We'll find the right place for some of those things. And ideally, those things that the county or the must-haves for the county would be a part of the IGA. And really, the IGA is what attaches, your commitment of finance to what you want to see as a deal. And then we take that, again, we carry that as a part of the negotiations.
Who are you foreseeing as the parties to the PLA and the CBA? And let me just take it down a bit of a line. Part of why I ask this is we have a mayor who has issued an executive order to take out language around DEI. And I think the county has been very strong in our commitment to DBE goals. I'm worried that some of those equity components that are important to us don't land in a PLA or a CBA because of the choice that the mayor has made. And so the parties who are involved in that become really important.
That's fair. The party to the PLA will obviously be the Blazers and the Joint Authority when that's established, which we expect that to be established no later than early next month. And of course, that'll be now the new entity that is negotiating, made up of the city and the county, excuse me, the city and the state, and of course, the respective labor unions that are part of the PLA. So that'll be listed out. And also, it was mentioned briefly, we also assume that will be a part of our negotiation with Rib City Management related to the Harmony Agreement. And we'll also list out explicitly who would be party to that as well, based on our partnership with our union team. So yes, we would be explicit on who is party to those different agreements, including the CBA. You mentioned the CBA as well. Absolutely. The CBA is trickier, of course, like I said, we want to get acknowledged, but we don't want to build the whole thing without more thorough, exactly. It'd be premature.
So something else.
Just for, I don't know that there's a way around this issue because I don't think we're going to be parties to that. And it's a concern for me. I don't have a good solution for it, but I just want to make sure it gets tracked in our conversations that this difference in how we approach equity and DEI between the city and the county is a potential problem.
Noted, Commissioner, I really appreciate you saying that.
And I think that is something, as we're talking about like what our term sheet looks like that we want to give to the city, like that is something that we can be like, we're not going to be a party to it, right? Because we don't want to be part of the Joint Authority, but like that we need to be consulted or we need to be approved, whatever we decide is with the city of Portland in terms of who's at that table.
So I have another request around the economic impact. This economic impact is the Tri-County area, but I note that Washington County and Clackamas County aren't being asked to contribute. So I'd like to have, and I know it's possible, it broken out. Are the highest grossing individuals from the Blazer organization actually living in Multnomah County or somewhere else? Because that's very relevant. And again, I don't think we're asking unless I guess if we find that Clackamas County is the biggest beneficiary, you could ask them to be the partner. But that absolutely needs to be broken out. And another question, this is for you, Eric. The SHS tax, there's not anything on the sheet that talks about how that would be treated from the transaction, the potential transaction proceeds. I'm assuming that the SHS tax would be paid, they'd pay that tax on the transaction?
Yeah, again, always with the preface that it's subject to what actually happens. But for the supportive housing and business income tax, we would assume that there would be a portion that that program would get from the transaction. But at the same time, I would say that those funds are restricted for certain purposes related to supportive housing. But yes, you're correct.
Right, but I'm not, there's not the assumption that the county is foregoing the SHS business income tax on that.
No,
The
absolutely not.
transaction proceeds, whatever amount they are.
Yeah, absolutely not, no.
Commissioner Singleton, can I go back to, I want to be able to have a follow-up conversation with you on how you're thinking about what that language looks like and where that language lives related to maybe some jurisdictional differences around commitments on equity and inclusion. So I saw Commissioner Moyer was also very affirmative, the chair, everyone, but would like to specifically come back and talk through that in a follow-up with you.
Yeah, that would be great. We just went through this at JPAC last week, so.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
So I have two things related to the two additional things related to the terms. I'm with Commissioner Moyer on some sort of payment in lieu of taxes. I just think there were very large TIF districts approved, not by us, that meant the county lost a lot of revenue. And so I think that's an important concept. And again, then the other thing, I think the size of the investment is very much dependent upon the size of the benefit. So this economic analysis, the project labor agreement, the community benefit agreement, the labor harmony, those are all, will be playing into like, what should the size of the county's investment be? It's not like, this is what we need to offer because that's what was asked. I mean, I spent a lot of time listening to like, here's what they need from the county. And so, but I think like what is ultimately negotiated, again, this is a negotiation, what's ultimately negotiated is dependent on the size of the, what the benefit to county residents and the county's mission is. In the APR, and I know this isn't the document, so, but it's not the governing document, and this isn't used, but it says the bonds can pay for related Rose Quarter developments. My understanding from the very beginning is that this was any county contribution was all to be going into the public asset. Mm-hmm. So what is the related, it may be just verbiage that actually doesn't mean what it says. But related Rose Quarter developments doesn't sound like actually either the two facilities that are owned by the public, which is the Veterans Memorial Coliseum or the actual Moda Center. So is that just maybe a language issue that I shouldn't be worried about? Because I would want to have specified any county contribution has to go into a public asset, like any bonding or anything like that.
Yeah, that's, Commissioner, I think that's language that we need to clarify and clean
Okay.
up. Yes, but.
Great.
Yeah.
Commissioner, can I ask a clarifying question to your question? Would you consider something like an investment around the transit hub that near the Rose Quarter? Like if we said we're going to put money into that as a part of the investment in the district? I'm just riffing with you, like what's inbound? Is it really just the infrastructure at the Moda Center or like a Sky Bridge, for example, something like that?
I'm going to go back to the thing I asked for from the very beginning, like, where is actually the broken out cost for all the projects? So we got a one-pager that said something like, here are possible uses of the funds. I didn't see that on there.
I was just riffing with you.
Yeah, so,
Commissioner, excuse me.
like, maybe, but I also feel like throughout this process, the goalpost changed. At the very beginning of the conversation, it was like 500 to 600 million, and then, like, when I felt like there was really a lot of work done to like hit, like, hey, the combined entities got to something like the low 500s. It was like, no, it actually has to be this amount. So I don't think I ever saw that. So I'm hesitant to say yes, because it seems like, oh, if we have extra money, we're going to spend it on that, when I actually have, so it's more conceptual, because like,
That's fair.
if the building is seismically not, needs to be seismically reinforced, or it needs all kinds of like electrical or just like structural upgrades, that's very different from, hey, we have this extra money that the county put in, let's find a public use. So conceptually, it could, but I feel like it's not even clear what it is that the county's being asked to buy.
Can I riff with that, Commissioner? Because that continues to be an underlying theme, not just for this body, but other electeds, the public, is what is the public dollar buying? Like, what is the specific widget to structure that this investment is going to make? And the opportunity for us, and the challenge at the same time, is we are looking at a transformational like moment at this Rose Quarter district. There's going to be very specific things that we already know already, that's in the facilities condition assessment, that we know we need to upgrade. So we will have to put a price tag specifically on a new loading dock or a new elevator system for the whole building, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's going to be things like potentially opening up the building to, so the VMC and the Moda Center are more connected visually, or like a feel that are less absolute right now. They're hopes, they're dreams, but they're not practically like written out with a price tag on it. And that's just going to be the nature of this investment for us. And it's going to be very difficult to sort of grok, but they're going to be very explicit things we're going to invest in. And there's going to be like, we're going to open up the concourse, which is a very common thing now with arenas, where you can feel the game or the arena energy, whether you're on the concourse or you can feel it, right? It's open, there's not walls. Those things are going to be evolving as we maximize the dollars. There's
When are you planning on starting construction, if all?
next summer, ideally.
And we're in the possible phase of conceptual thinking? Like, I've never built an arena, so I would not claim in any way I have any expertise on building an arena. But I do know the building process, and sadly, I do know your development office and permitting. How in the world can we be in thoughts and concepts and think you're going to break ground in a year?
The good news is that the nature of renovations, it's a very small group of construction companies and architects that do this.
Sure,
And so we're not reinventing the wheel on this one. There's a lot of things that we know about the building already. There's been a lot of work already done.
But you can't tell us what we would spend the money. I mean, that to me seems like we're either at a happy, thoughtful, ethereal space, or we have an actual general, I mean, it's probably not at 30% build out, but we've at least have got to know what we would do. I'm sorry, it's either one or the other.
Commissioner, this is going to happen in phases. It's not going to happen all at once, right? We're going to be navigating between multiple basketball seasons and concerts, so there's going to be construction happening as there's events, ongoing. So it's not like we're going to have all this at once. It's going to be phased in based on what we can get done, because we also have this goal of 2030.
Then why would we be asked to bond early at an expense of over $4 million additional just to tap a revenue stream that's not available if this is a phased out project in which you don't need all the cash at one time?
Well, we're going to need the cash. I mean, let's be clear. Like, for a project of this scale, the materials would get purchased in advance. We start, negotiating with our design teams to start to plot this out. This is going to happen incredibly fast. And if I hadn't seen it from my own eyes in other cities across the country, I would be in your same place, incredulous about the potential. The reality is these things get done. The other thing I want to just add is just to get the plug for our permitting bureau. Very different dynamic there these days, and the work at PDX that they did over there was similar to what the need's going to be for Moda Center to move things quickly. So we have proofs in the pudding. You can talk to Curtis Robin Holt about the work that his team did with our permitting division at the city. So I'm feeling less concerned about the permitting side. I'm more concerned
I
about
literally have checked your wait times in the last week, so we can have that conversation offline, and it's not really relevant. I guess I'm just going back to Commissioner Brumedward's point. We don't have to belabor what is in writing or not, but I feel, I'll only speak for myself, I feel really strongly that I need to be able to know what a taxpayer dollar will fund, and maybe we need to have terms that say Multnomah County dollars will not fund XYZ. If that's not something you can give to us before we have to make a decision, then I think the reverse might need to be true, and we may need to tell you, you can only spend our money on XYZ because you can't tell us what you'd spend it on.
Evan, I noticed you came up. I just wanted to see if there was something you wanted to add.
Sure. I'll just briefly introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Eben Jundef-Hoffer. I work for City Council President Jamie Dunphy on the policy side. And the conversation that you're having right now is just very familiar to me from the conversations that are happening in City Council. The fundamental question of, do we know what we are buying before we have to open the wallet? Before we have to communicate to the public, hey, this is worth it to you to do this? And there simply are information gaps with the timeline that we're on and with the information that has been provided to us by the partners in the process that's developing. So from the council president's perspective, I'd say we agree to a broad sense. We need to know more. And your collaboration in clarifying to our partners that we need to know more, I think, is a benefit to all of us.
Thank you, Evan. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're a little bit over noon. I want to see if there's any, I want to respect folks' time. I know this is an important conversation. It is definitely, this is just the beginning of the conversation, though, not the final thing. Anything else for the good of the order or for the folks that we have here? And we can continue to have Donnie come back and answer questions.
I just have a couple things. One, I want to know more about accessibility upgrades and what that will look like inside getting into and inside the arena. And then what, if any, is the clawback language being contemplated, because the bridge agreement is a little weak sauce on that.
Oh.
It's only like, it says it's like 4 years, and then they get to decide if they're going to increase that again to another 5 years. So I just want to know if we're looking at stronger language in the agreement. And I have this written out so I can get this out to you in writing as well. All the list of different pieces, because one thing, I know we keep talking about the Blazers, and some of us keep bringing up the fire, but I keep hearing that the fire, some people can't even reach the valve for the shower because the locker rooms are built for 6'3" men. Like, that's not acceptable. So that stuff I want to make sure we're including in any renovation.
Okay.
One, if I can, to the question that Commissioner Moyer asked about when they're going to get details on, we have a work session scheduled with our city council on July 23rd, when the target of that work session is to start working through some of the specifics of the design and some of the elements that we're talking about. So that's approximately around the time that information would also be available for the county, if you'd all like us to come back with our architects to talk through those things. So that's just, I want to put that plug in right now.
So just a couple things, I'll just run through the quick list. A relocation penalty, I want to see that. There's no mention of the naming rights, and we know that's value, like who gets that money? So, but all, like a host of revenue streams, nobody has mentioned previously that any of those go to the county, but I feel like just like if we're putting funds in, that we get a revenue stream out of that. in the document, it talks about the employee income taxes diverted from the general fund into the arena fund. Does that also apply to any of the employees that are in private developments within the district? And I don't need within the sports and entertainment district, I don't need an answer right now, but I need to know that answer. Commissioner Moyer's comment about the TIF district, I noticed in the terms of the bridge agreement, it specifically states that there will be a TIF district, so that's concerning because our list of conditions had no TIF district. Then there's no mention about if there's cost overruns. I would assume the county has no responsibility for any cost overruns. And I'm going to go back to your question a little bit about with the transportation. It's like, I would say no, because what was presented, I think, to everybody is that this needs to be a market deal for the arena, not we're building out the county's being asked to build out a whole district. Question just that I'm curious about is how much Merritt Paulson put into the Providence Park when he bought the timbers. I understand it was, I want to say, $50 to $70 million. And I had a front row seat to that negotiation, and we have a beautiful park, but it also, I believe, was with private investment. And I think I've laid out, say you have our list. The club, and this is somewhat dependent on, I know there's been conversations already on the IGA, but like the clawback has to be a real clawback, not just, oh, we're leaving and we're going to stop paying money in. And I know that creates an issue if there's bonds that have been issued because there's a commitment to repay those. However, a real clawback means like you claw back your investment. And I noticed that there's one in the bridge terms, and I think we need to see a real clawback. We want to have a long-term partnership with the Blazers, and also we should not enter into an agreement with wishful thinking that this is anything but a business deal. Hopefully a business deal with we like each other, and we get a great team for the city, but it also, I think we have, from a fiduciary responsibility for the taxpayers, we can't engage in wishful thinking. We need to make sure that we're protecting taxpayers' resources that are put into any deal.
Thank you. And Chair, before you close, I've got a list of about 23 questions that I captured today. We'll go back through today's session. I know Donnie is taking notes. Portland City Council has a work session tomorrow where there'll be maybe similar questions, different questions, but if we could collect your questions by the end of the week so that we can be responsive and we can crowdsource the answers, that we're going to need to do that, and make sure that both jurisdictions are getting their answers to their questions, but specifically able to respond to the questions that we've heard here today. So if by the end of the week you could send them in writing to me, please, and I'll share them with our colleagues and make sure that we're following up as quickly as possible, and we'll make some adjustments to the timeline based on what we've heard here and do some consultation on what some next steps are as the board considers this proposed investment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks, everyone. Oh,
I just want to, Michael had to speak early, and I think I just want to close with coming back to the importance of this space and placemaking for folks, right? This is where it's more than the benefits that ABT may be looking for that need to happen here, right? There's a broad community that will be impacted by construction, but is impacted by the ongoing operations of this space. This is in the middle of a district that is being redeveloped in a way that is uplifted and supportive of the Black community. And so those voices must also be centered when we think about community benefits and any of these further discussions. And I will just say, it is really critical to me that we don't end up in a space where we've got a giant mothballed arena in the middle of District 2, that we do not want it to look like that, and we do not want that kind of blight in the area that we are trying to redevelop in a way that addresses, or at least tries to address, the past harms that have been inflicted repeatedly on this community.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I think that also just underlines, these renovations are really integral to our economy, to this neighborhood, and really the well-being of the neighborhood. So I think we have an opportunity here, but we need to get it done right and make sure, as you said, Commissioner, that we are being fiscally responsible. And the county can be a partner in this work, but we've got a lot of work to do to get this in the place that it needs to be. So I'm looking forward to the continued discussions on that. That concludes today's board briefing. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 25th at 9:30 a.m. There being no further business, we are adjourned.